everyone. Welcome to Measuring Flicks. I'm Carl Hartley.
I'm Max Peterson, and today we are covering, today's the last day of our second month, so we have...
I feel like we just started Western month, like seriously.
I know. I'm just glad that we have a bunch of Westerns planned for the Patreon series, because we don't have to stop if we don't want to.
Because I just want to keep watching Westerns. Like, I want to ride a horse, I want to make a campfire, I want to eat beans.
Oh my God. I wore my cowboy hat while I watched today's movie.
Right.
I just sat on my couch, I wore my cowboy hat, and I wished that I had spurs to occasionally climb.
Seriously, right?
God.
Everything is so brilliant about Westerns.
I will say this, though, we'll bring a little bit of the personal to the show. Mm-hmm. I don't think Bird could take another month of Westerns.
Probably not.
Wow. Like... We have literally had, like, Bird and I never fight, especially about my movies. Usually It's like, oh, you watch such dumb movies. I love you. Here's a kid. I'll make you some popcorn. And I do watch dumb movies.
Western, right?
Now oh my God. Like, we've had like two little like spats while I was watching the last two. I'm like watching Unforgiven and I'm like, oh my God, it's a beautiful deconstruction of the Western. Like all the stuff we talked about last week. But she goes, she's like, men and their guns. And I'm like, what? No, you're missing the point of the scene.
Right.
You better watch out, woman, or I'll give you the back of my head. Like, we got like really, it's just been like really tense. And then Searchers I watched yesterday morning.
Right.
And I'm watching The Searchers and that's what we're talking about today.
The movie today is The Searchers. The movie today is
The Searchers, directed by John Ford, 1956. We'll get to the numbers in just a second, but a classic Western.
Before the show, I'm like, we could talk about this movie for probably half a day.
Yeah, I mean, there's a text I have upstairs. I didn't get to read it because I got lazy. Mm-hmm. Actually, it's because I had to go to work. But there's a great book called Westerns and the American Myth, and there's like 60 pages on just The Searchers. It's like a quarter of the book.
It's just this movie.
But so
understandably so.
So I'm watching. Obviously, we'll get into it. But like, obviously, one of the characters is insanely racist, and Bird's coming down, and she's just like, how many more Westerns do you have to watch? I'm like, this is the last one. Just don't say anything. I hold this movie dear. This is like a sacred text to me. Please don't start shit with me right now. And I can totally understand her perspective, but yeah, she does not like Westerns, and I could just watch like 50 more.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Get one of those cheap box sets by like Watermill Cinemas or whatever that is like done all these.
Oh my God, you just said my call words, Watermill Cinemas. I have like 7 movie packs where every movie starts with the
little yes, exactly.
And there's the little like water wheel that like that's how you know you're in for a shitty good time.
Right.
Okay, so some numbers for The Searchers.
Yeah, crunch me on some numbers, man.
We got to get into The Searchers.
Yeah, do it.
So when we watched Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, that was rated the 7th greatest film in the Western genre, I believe. Or was that... was the 7th was Liberty Valance?
Liberty Valance, I think.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So, so I can't remember the Liberty Valance numbers, but we've been slowly getting closer to 1.
These are all on the AFI that we've done.
Right, the American Film Institute. All the numbers I'm saying are coming from 2007 and 2008, which have been the years that I've been working from. So last week we found out that Unforgiven was the AFI's 4th greatest film in the Western genre, and it was 68th on their list of the greatest movies of all time. The Searchers, this movie we're talking about today, is their number 12 greatest movie of all time.
Of all time.
It's almost breaking the top 10.
Jesus.
This film is almost in their top 10 movies
Citizen Kane of
ever.
the Western genre.
And it is, unsurprisingly, their number 1 greatest film in the Western genre. And it's not even just the U.S., where this movie is like fucking lauded and revered.
Yeah. Of course. By other directors and writers and...
Right. You can find...
Anyway, yeah.
There's famously Jean-Luc Godard, the guy who... Is he the director? He did Léon the Professional? Is that him?
Yes.
Or is that... Yeah.
No. That was Luc Besson.
That was Luc Besson. But Jean-Luc Godard said that he hated everything about John Wayne, hated his politics, but at the end of the movie, when Ethan picks Debbie up, he forgave him for everything.
Yeah, holy shit. which is that moment for Ethan in the movie anyways.
Right,
like,
yeah. Like that self-forgiveness.
You kind of forgive him for being such a fucking douchebag the entire time.
In 2015, this is recently, the BBC rated this number 5 of all-time greatest American films. You can find...
On the BBC?
On the BBC.
On
like...
BBC.
Across the world, this movie, even though it's a Western, and oftentimes, especially
and racist-ish, but it does a thing with race. Yeah,
it does a really interesting thing with race and hate. But just the fact that across cultures, because the American Western is a very specific American genre.
Sure.
Like that is. You can't go to England, and I mean you can because Sergio Leone famously did
England?
it in Italy.
Why not? Yeah. Don't tell me what I can't do.
I was about to make like 3 really hard political jokes. I'm like, we're gonna hold on to those.
That. Yeah.
No, but I mean, like, think about that. Like, when you go to another country, they don't have the American West.
Right.
Everywhere's got gangsters. Everywhere's got romance. Everywhere's got war.
But you don't have Monument Valley.
You don't have Monument Valley. You don't have your cowboys. I mean, yes, there are places in South America where, because there's a lot of crossover between that. But
right, of course.
This is a specifically American genre, and even filmmakers from France, filmmakers in England are looking at this film and saying, like, this is a benchmark of cinema.
Yep.
Even when you take the Western trappings of it aside, this is such a power. There's such
I hate to use the word transcend because it's used a lot, but it does. It transcends the genre.
Yeah, I mean, like that, like 50 Shades of Grey is not just a romance film. It's a timeless story. I can't even lie.
It's a time capsule of... I can't even.
Anyway, yeah. So, I mean, last week we were looking at Unforgiven. That was number 4 on the top 10 best Westerns and 68th greatest movie of all time. But The Searchers is just...
It's right there.
So, numbers out of the way, what do you think?
Okay. So... Upon conclusion of watching this movie, I bought the Blu-ray, and right on the front of the Blu-ray it says VistaVision, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh, sweet! They did a transfer. I'm going to get a really tight widescreen. It's going to most of my huge television is going to be black bars, right? Because it's going to be that." Dude, they can't. It's 16:9 even on the Blu-ray. So I was pissed. It was like watching an old VHS pan and scan of like Star Wars or something, where you can just you can tell when it's like shifting over. And you're getting that weird sort of, we're going to look over to the left now because action is moving over to the left. I was so pissed. I'm like, give me the fucking VistaVision, man. Well, because there's only a few films that were done in VistaVision, but that was like my first thing. Is like the movie is so beautiful. Did
VistaVision have to do with aspect ratio?
Yeah, it was the
color?
widest. No, it was the widest format ever. Like, it was shot.
Did Tarantino? This is the one that Tarantino used for Hateful Eight.
Hateful Eight was in VistaVision. Yeah.
Okay. I had read about the transfer when they transferred to DVD and Blu-ray. When they went back to restore the original and put it on and digitize it, the team that did the digital transfer found that the original VistaVision print, because each color is like a separate layer.
It's a separate layer, yeah.
And
there's
the
3
yellow,
different colors or whatever
the yellow had faded so much that it was completely unusable.
Oh, wow.
So they went back and I can't remember what they used. It was like there's like a secondary film that they were able to. It's the black and white transfer.
Oh, okay.
And
to sort of bring in some of those other colors or whatever.
Yes, and I think it was also done Technicolor, right? Mm-hmm. So they did the original. They weren't able to get the digital print from the VistaVision film because the yellow had degraded so far. So they used a different like black and white color separation film to do all of the digital masters. I
just want to see, like, after watching this, like, I mourned
Panavision
for like not being able to see this on
the big screen
in a theater on the big screen it's like the original print. Because fuck, this movie is like beautiful. That first scene, the opening shot. You want to talk about like liminal space, like?
Oh, do you want to start there? And
I kind of want to talk through this movie like in order of like of
what
we
happened?
Bounce around, like just like what the movie like, because there's so much that happens. Like you right off, like from Jump Street, like the very beginning of the movie, after the. It's an old movie, so you have like the orchestra playing with it's The Searchers. It's directed by John Ford. You have your title cards that come up, and then the first shot we see is a door opening, and a woman standing in that doorway, completely black, silhouetted against Monument Valley.
Right.
And then the camera pushes out through into that space. It's like, you're in a Western.
Does the door, I can't remember, in the opening shot, does the door open and then she steps into the space? So it starts on black and then
the door opens and then she steps in.
Which is interesting because the end of the film is they all go back into that. And
Except
the door,
for Ethan, and then the door closes,
So I do also want to talk through this in order, but these shots in particular, if there's four that there's more, but there's four main ones that I want to...
I never take notes when I watch movies, dude. I was like scribbling all over the fucking place.
But I'd like to go through those four shots.
Yeah, go for it.
As always with Measuring Flicks, we would like to assume that you have seen the AFI's greatest Western of all time.
Right.
And we're gonna dig into the nitty gritty. We're not gonna summarize the plot. The plot's really simple. It's essentially this: a group of Comanche Indians come in and basically kill a family of settlers, kidnap two of the daughters, kill one of the daughters, and then keep the youngest daughter.
Yep, and then John Wayne,
and I can't remember the actor's name.
His nephew, his name is Marty.
Right.
In the movie.
So Ethan and Marty.
Yep.
Ethan is an old Confederate soldier. You get the sense that a lot of the people in this film are
former
Confederate soldiers, but
yeah.
they've all sort of reintegrated, and Ethan has not. Ethan is still...
Not even a little bit.
No, he is still completely with the Confederacy. There's a great joke about the Union cavalrymen later, or infantrymen later on.
Played by the Duke's son, too.
Yeah. But those two go out after the band of Comanches that have Debbie, who is the young girl.
Yep.
And they spend
5 years.
Well, I thought the second chunk was 5 years, and they were gone for 2, so I think it's 7.
Might be actually 7 years.
I think it's 7 years that they spend chasing this group down. Ultimately, they do get her back, but there's a bunch in between. So the plot is really simple, and it doesn't really matter.
Literally the searchers, two dudes searching for
Debbie, right?
Searching for Debbie.
They're looking, they're looking for this chief Scar who stole this little girl, and they're going to get her back. The plot is totally not important.
It's what happens.
It's everything else. Yeah, like summarizing movies is dumb for exactly
that reason. Yeah,
like
honest trailers of the searchers.
Right, exactly. It's like two guys look for a little girl.
Right,
they find her. Movie's over. But oh my god, the stuff
bunch of Indians die.
So yeah, I know, and we are using the term Indian specifically because of Ethan's attitude toward Native Americans, which we'll get into in depth. This movie is. It does not shy away or even blink at racism. It's one
calling it out. Actually,
it's one of its main themes.
Yep,
is Ethan's racism.
It's calling it on the dance floor and making you face it.
Which is actually I found a lot of people had questions about why Ethan was racist, and I just wondered, did nobody notice? There's a huge hint right in the movie as to why Ethan is the way he is. When Debbie sneaks out the window and goes and hides by the tombstone, that's Ethan's mother's tombstone, and it says that she was murdered by a band of Indians in 1944 or in 1844.
So his wife was murdered by
his mom.
His mom.
His mother. His and his brother, because he has a brother whose wife he is coveting. But
and the wife is pretty fancy on him too. By the way,
we'll get into that. But anyway, so Ethan's mother was killed by a band of Apaches and Comanches, and he has never gotten over it. That's what it is. Everyone who's curious, like, why is he so racist? It's because they killed his mom. Now, whether or not he's right to be racist and the weird form that his racism takes, we'll get into, but I want to cover these shots.
Yep, go for it.
So Kill Bill Volume 2. Doesn't that sound like I just stepped completely away from the movie?
Nope.
But in Kill Bill Volume 2, Quentin Tarantino exactly replicates, but in mirror image, the opening shot of The Searchers. And I realized something further. I've always pointed this out to people, where in the opening shot of The Searchers, Martha comes, it's black inside and blindingly bright with the desert outside. Oftentimes this is translated to mean the safe domestic space.
Into the wild.
Or the danger or the unknown or the unknown element or whatever, because usually Martha steps into the liminal and looks out, and then John Wayne, the person who basically has been away, has had no home for 3 years, he represents the wild, and he is coming back into that domestic space. So in Kill Bill Volume 2, we have the scene when the bride gets married.
Oh, yes.
So
shit.
she stands in the doorway of the church with blinding brightness outside, and it's pure black in the church, so she's silhouetted, except for she's on the right side of the doorway and Martha's on the left. He's spoken repeatedly about he intentionally homaged that shot because The Searchers is the fucking one of the best movies ever made.
Right.
So I realized that the context is the same as well.
Uh-huh.
She's in a church, not a house, but she's about to be married. She's in a space creating domesticity. She's in a space creating a domestic space.
Oh my God, you're making my brain hurt.
So she's standing in the liminality of the doorway, looking out at the unknown, right? And where John Wayne is the man without a home, the hard man, the violent man. Yeah. Who does she see approach but Bill?
Bill, yeah.
So John Wayne comes in and disrupts the domestic space because he covets his brother's wife. I forget his brother's name because he's only alive for like 5 minutes.
He's alive for 5.5 minutes, exactly.
But he comes in and there's a very clear thing between Martha and John Wayne. They're like...
She is like drooling over him hardcore.
Bedroom
just
eyes, like everything shy of just like grabbing his crotch.
Yeah, Isaiah, why don't you just grab his dick?
You guys should just have sex. Why aren't
really?
you just, I mean, the tension is so fucking intense.
Palpable.
So what do we have? Martha settled for the safer brother.
Yep.
Right? And then the dangerous brother comes back in, and her feelings for him cannot be disguised.
She gets a little damp in the nethers.
Boom, flash to Kill Bill Volume 2. The bride tries to settle down with a guy who works in a record store with a safe domestic life, and her we can infer that Bill was formerly her lover.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when you watch those movies, it's all contextual, but it's very clear.
Yeah.
So her dangerous, violent, ex-boyfriendy type comes back in, and some of those passions are renewed when Bill enters the church, and they have their discussion. I mean, the context is identical,
the same,
but none of the specifics are the same. That is brilliant filmmaking on Tarantino's part. We're not talking about Tarantino, but I am showing the
impact
that this movie had. This is 1959.
Dude, seriously, before you talk about the other shots, like on the Blu-ray I have, there's the behind the scenes like interviews with John Milius and Martin Scorsese and another filmmaker, but they are just like drooling over this. I mean, Milius did like Red Dawn and like Conan the Barbarian. He's famous for writing a lot of like the quintessential 80s flicks, right? And across genres. And then, of course, Martin Scorsese, who did a movie about a cab driver.
He does a cab driver movie.
And then he did one about like Nice Guys or something.
Did he? It was Good Folks. Good guys.
Darn good.
Darn good people.
Darn good people.
Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, The Departed.
The list goes on and on, right? But
Scorsese's
these guys are just
legend.
like gushing over this movie. And at some point, like, you got to step back. Like, is that movie, is The Searchers really that good? And then when you go back, and if you're actually watching this movie with a critical eye, or not, but us in this podcast, we have to watch it. And holy fuck,
and it's almost with a like a film lover's eye.
Yeah,
this is not a movie to be watched casually. You can casually watch anything.
Oh, absolutely, you can watch it as a John Wayne Western, fine, whatever.
Right, and it's going to be
But your brain is going to be knocking on the door, though, like, hey, there is something extra going on
especially
here.
with John Wayne's performance.
Okay, go on to your shots.
Is this John Wayne's best performance?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
I agree 100%. Okay, but so like one of the things that I've always known, because I've always been a huge cinephile. I'm a huge lover of film. I absorb it. I adore it. I drool on it. But I've watched The Godfather with people who aren't cinephiles.
Right.
When we talk about The Godfather, when people who love movies talk about this caliber of film, we're like, oh my god, oh my. Yeah. I've watched The Godfather with people who are bored or who take it to task for like small technical errors.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, there are people who only watch film as entertainment and don't see it as capital A art.
And that's
It's
fine.
totally fine.
Absolutely. The movie's still getting watched, which is the point of making the movie. But
right. Okay, so let's do the shots.
Yes.
Let's do the shots because it's a huge unpacking of the film. So we've already talked about the first shot and Tarantino's treatment of it, which is amazing. The second shot is after Ethan and Marty have been gone for 2 years looking for the girl.
Yeah, for Debbie. Yeah.
Debbie, right. So they've gone out. The first time they turn back is when they trace the Comanche tribe.
And they're in the winter,
right? They're in the winter.
Yeah.
By the way, horses in snow. Those shots make me want to cry. They're so fucking beautiful.
Know, right?
This film is beautiful. So the first time they come back, the first domestic space has been destroyed.
Yes, it is burned
to the ground.
And Lucas was a fan as well because that's clearly Owen and Baru's.
Owen and Baru's rant.
Yeah.
Oh, put a pin in that really quick because I do have something I want to tell you about this. Anyway, when they come back to that second domestic space, it's now Ethan. I think the purpose of that is to reestablish and call back the mind of the viewer to why this is all happening.
Yep.
It's like the ghost of Martha because, again, we see the wife come out and then the husband follows her and they watch Ethan and Marty come. And now the daughter, we introduce the love interest. But it's recalling that domestic space which was destroyed.
Right. Hey, remember why these guys are out
Remember
there
why
doing
these guys are doing this. And to now add Marty to because they've been in the wild for 2 years. So now you're adding Marty to something outside the domestic space.
Right. He's been sort of like the tag along up to this point. Like,
Right.
He's the half-breed nephew.
Right. There's a really 1/8 Cherokee.
I just realized they couldn't see
the quotes.
my air quotes.
Yes. Carl did not just drop half-breed.
No.
That is John Wayne's words from the film, and he did air quotes it heavily. We're just gonna say stuff that sounds very racist because John Wayne says
it.
Stuff that doesn't sound very racist, but genuinely is intensely racist. So this is a hard movie to talk about in a lot of ways, but it's very enlightening, especially in the context of now. But what that shot does is it reestablishes domestic space and like wild space. There's a famous shot in Shane where there's a funeral happening in the foreground and it's people around a grave.
Right.
And in the background is the town controlled by the cattlemen and ranch interests. So a lot of people do that and blow it out into like intimate community power, organized power. But behind the town is a mountain range, which is the wild, right? Yes. In the funeral scene in this movie, there's a funeral and a huge Monument Valley mountain behind it.
Right behind.
So that, I think, is the wild. And they're
a very impatient Ethan.
Right, yeah. We ain't got time.
All right, say your amens, damn it. We gotta go.
I think he says put an amen on it. He's like, I'm not done yet. And he's like, we ain't got time.
Put an amen on it.
Anyway, and then what I think the other purpose of that scene we're talking about with the reestablishment of the domestic space is to show the call of that domestic space to our ostensible protagonists, because the girl is like, come on, she clearly loves Marty.
She wants him to come stay home, marry her, and give her babies.
Once they've re-entered that domestic space, I mean, are you okay with such a deep reading of this?
No, absolutely.
Okay, once they re-enter that domestic space, what do we see? We see John Wayne kind of like a piece of grit in an oyster, like not ever becoming part of it.
Yep.
He moves in the domestic space fine. He'll smoke and talk and he'll make jokes, but he's never part of it. Whereas Marty strips naked, extremely vulnerable,
he's in the
takes
bathtub.
a bath.
Yep.
He curls up under a blanket. John
like
Wayne,
a little boy.
Right.
He's a child.
I think that's an important point, is that when Marty re-enters the domestic space, he becomes of it again, whereas Ethan is never.
And he loses years. Like, he does become sort of like a child and very comfortable in his domestic space.
And there's at first it's always surprising to see the weird like hijinks happening between Marty and, I can't remember the girl's name, Lucy? No, Lucy's the sister who gets killed. Yep. But Marty's love interest, the woman who is going to get married later on.
Yes.
So to see like their weird like, oh, she's splashing him in the bath.
Right.
But it's not frivolous at all. It's juxtaposing Ethan and Marty.
Yep.
It's showing the different worlds of these two men and the different worlds of this film.
The hardened military veteran who has a racist backbone, and then the child that is Marty that was just sort of thrown into this situation.
Right. So
of having to become something that he never thought he would have to become, which is one of the searchers. Right.
Now the third,
but he is the only person that stands up to Ethan, as it turns out,
which is amazing.
He ends up being the hero, and then and also in standing up to Ethan, bizarrely earns Ethan's begrudging respect. Begrudgingly, yeah.
Like it's strange. You can tell that he's and we're jumping all over, but we can tell that he, when he sees the will and finds out that Ethan has accepted him after 7 years of just like calling him half-breed, calling him blanket head.
Right. Jesus.
And like after 7 years of abuse at this man's hands, to have that respect, you can see him still bridle against the man.
He hates the fact that here's my will, read it. I fucking hate that I'm giving you this will. Like you can see, he's not even happy with himself that he's accepted him.
It's like that moment to me is like the quintessential like the Western man moment where it's like, well, we both have feelings and neither of us are going to acknowledge them. Right. And normally that would be like a cliche, like, oh, well, and also like kind of a bummer to watch in a world where now it's okay for men to be in touch with their feelings. Right. But there's such a texture to the performances in that scene, which we'll get to. But third shot. Okay.
And number 3.
I know. We're moving along. But that third shot is when they find Look dead in the teepee, right? So when John Wayne enters the teepee, let's get this scene. Let's get a couple things on the table really fast. Ethan hates the Comanches.
Yes.
But he's also extremely familiar with their culture, with their behavioral patterns, with their dietary patterns, he's fluent in their language. Yes. So I want to talk about that for sure.
Somebody teach you?
But I know that's a great exchange. But what we see is earlier in the film, when they first set out after the Comanche tribe, they find that one of the Comanches has died and been buried
under a rock, yeah.
And the first party is much larger. And when they're going out to get the Comanches, they pull the rock aside. And one of the guys, they're like, because, they killed a settler family, one guy's upset and he takes a rock and he throws a rock on the body. And everyone's like, whoa, we can't, you guys are desecrating a corpse. And everyone's mortified. And Ethan's response is to say, why don't you finish the job?
Shoots him twice in the head.
He shoots his eyes out.
Yeah.
Ethan takes his revolver out and shoots the corpse twice in the face and shoots his eyes out. And they're like, they're not like, whoa, Ethan. Right. It's so violent and so beyond the pale that they're all stunned almost to silence. It's pure disgust at the level of coldness that this man's displaying. And the Reverend says, I think it's the Reverend says, what'd you do that for? And he says, what did that accomplish or something like that? And
Nothing
Ethan
by
says,
your book.
Nothing by your book, but to this Comanche, it means that without his eyes, he can't find his way to the happy hunting ground and will be trapped forever, wandering between the two worlds. He's so intimately familiar with their religious beliefs that he can more effectively,
fuck them up.
Basically, he can more effectively hate them with his understanding.
Oh my God.
But so seeing that, flash forward to the scene where he finds Marty's, that's all like a very weird comical bit where he accidentally marries a Comanche woman.
Squaw.
Right, he marries a squaw. Again, their words, not ours.
Right.
But he goes into John, and it's not even Marty who finds her. When John Wayne walks into the tent and finds Look, he doesn't another good dead dirty
covers her.
He covers her with her blanket, the coveted blanket that she had, and then picks up her hat and cleans it off. Mm-hmm. Now, in that moment, I think this is extremely important for two reasons. We get another example of the dark interior space shot out through a doorway into the wilds beyond. And what we see beyond is destruction because the cavalry has destroyed that.
Oh, it's a massacre.
That settlement.
Yeah.
So we're in the teepee in the domestic space, which is interesting because to this point in the film, so far, the Native Americans have never been equated with the domestic space. They've always been the danger outside.
Right, outside, yep.
But in this moment, who enters the domestic space freely is John Wayne.
It's John Wayne, yeah.
John Wayne enters this space, and when John Wayne is there, we cognitively reframe in the film and make this the domestic space, looking out at the wild and the destruction. And what is the wild and the destruction? Is the destruction of that encampment.
Yeah.
So I think that this is a really heady moment where John Ford is aligning John Wayne with the Native Americans and with the Comanches, and his nomadic lifestyle, his integral knowledge of their beliefs and culture puts him in that camp. And in this moment where we see him being tender towards one of his what we would call hated enemies normally, there's almost a weird moment where now John Wayne is identified as Comanche.
Right. There's a lot of that towards the end of the film, like. Well, when they first find Debbie, like, he's gonna kill her because she's become Comanche now, right? So his hate for the Native Americans is so deep that he is willing to kill his niece because she's been with them for so long that, well, she's not white anymore. She is now Comanche, so he is ready to kill her.
There's the line when they go to the cavalry encampment and see
and they find
there's like three women.
Three women that had been captured
by the Comanche tribe, and now they've all gone completely insane.
Yes.
And they're like, one woman's clutching a doll and is like, you know, they're all like, it's like really, really. Like, it's crazy acting at its most extreme. Yeah. And in a weird way, the performances are not goofy, not silly.
Oh, they're not.
They're kind of chilling.
Yeah.
But there's a moment where they're about to leave, and the cavalryman he's talking to says, hard to believe they're white. And John Wayne goes, They ain't white. Not anymore.
Yep. Ugh. Jesus.
That is Ethan's surface thesis.
Yeah, right.
Now, I say surface thesis because Ethan is a fucking astonishingly multifaceted character. Yes. I will not. There's a couple people who online, if you read like a couple reviews, will defend like, oh, he's not really racist. No, he is.
No, he is. Clearly.
We're making no bones about this. Ethan's a monster.
Yes.
An absolute monster. And the end of the movie, the last shot, look at that segue. So there's two more shots that establish this dynamic, and the last one supports the reading that Ethan is in fact a monster, but perhaps a necessary monster, and perhaps a monster who has grown or who has changed since the beginning of the film.
Okay.
So the fourth shot is when they finally run up to Debbie, or when they finally find Debbie, and Marty's trying to. She runs away, and Ethan gets on his horse, and he's just scalped Scar.
Right.
He's holding his fucking scalp. And he starts chasing down Debbie, pistol drawn on his horse.
And you're like, Marty, he's gonna fucking kill Debbie
because he's already tried to once. He's already tried to kill her because she's quote unquote no longer white. Yeah. So he tries to run Debbie down, and Marty tries to stop him. Right? He's like, "No, Ethan, no!" And there's a brief struggle. Him over, just bowls him right out of the way, but doesn't kill him, which I think is important because that foreshadows what is about to happen with Debbie. They go up a hill in Monument Valley, California, and come down a hill 700 miles away.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not the same location. I found that out, which I thought was really cool. But Debbie, when we see Debbie running, she's running towards a cave.
A cave, yes.
And that shot comes from inside the super dark cave. Now, what this is to me is we started with a domestic space, which was like the idyllic domestic space.
Yes.
And then we moved into a domestic space after the first one had burned down. Then we moved into a teepee, and now we've moved to a cave. We've watched the domestic space degrade as Ethan has spent more and more time in the wild, and what domesticity means to him has also shifted and changed.
Yes.
So Debbie is sprinting towards that domestic space because if she can, metaphorically, if she can get back into the domestic space, if she can,
then she's safe, right?
Because she will have reestablished. I'm using this from Ethan's perspective, the perspective of in Ethan's mind. If she can cease to be of the other, and start to once again become essentially domestic or made white again in Ethan's eyes. If she can move from one space to another, then she can live.
Right.
And he is frantically trying to stop her from doing that.
It's chasing her on horseback, yeah.
Which is interesting when we look again at how Ethan has been aligned with the Comanche.
Yeah. And when he finally does, she's just in the mouth of the cave when he gets off.
Space.
Yeah, in the liminal space when he grabs her.
Right.
And picks her up.
Right.
Into
her
the air.
Fear is so incredible.
And then he coddles her and says, "Let's go home, Debbie."
He swings her into his arms and says, Let's go home, Debbie. Talk to me, Carl.
Fuck. Oh, man. You've done a very good job of speaking clearly about this. I'm really fucking hungover. It's daylight savings day, man.
Listeners, both Carl and I were out we were out long time last night.
We were out long time.
Oh my God. And we both forgot that today was the spring forward.
Oh, it's spring forward.
Daylight savings
Perfect.
time. So I went to bed around 1, and my alarm went off at 7, which meant 6, which meant 5 hours of sleep.
Exactly.
I'm shocked I'm doing this.
I can't even. You did very well, sir. I'm so proud of you right now. And the fact that I'm following along with what you're saying and comprehending it. I'm super proud of myself right now.
I know. I can see you're nodding at all the right points. I'm like, he's still with me.
He's still with me. My eyes are glazed over.
There's tears, but they're not sad tears. No. It's just I feel so bad.
How is it possible to have dry tears? I
don't know.
Dry tears.
I know.
Right
I can
now.
see them. It's like a weird. It's like glue. It's like glue. It's terrible. But no, and then of course, it doesn't even really bear.
I wrote down liminal space with 2 exclamation marks.
Yeah, which is a concept I think we introduced in the first episode.
I think so. And I've been obsessed with liminal space now. I can't not see it. I find myself standing in liminal space. I'm just always in doorways and hallways now. I'm in the liminal space. I'm between worlds right now.
And then every once in a while, you want to just turn to the person next to you, and you're like, right now, I'm in the kitchen, but watch this. When I take a step, I'm
now in the living room. You know where it was in between that?
It's
in the liminal space.
I was pure potential for one moment, and then you ultimately, as all heroes do, where are you going? Come back.
Come back. So the way I've got this, my notes are so sporadic on this, but
it's hard not to take notes sporadically.
But the way that I write notes is kind of funny. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to share a couple with you and our audience. So one of the notes that I have is the Duke is a racist asshole.
Yeah.
So that's one note.
Very good, Carl. My giant diatribe on the domestic space.
And I have the Duke is a racist asshole. But this is what is important. Why this is the two of us work well together I feel like I'm the color commentary.
Yin yang, right? I'm the Joe Rogan MMA commentary.
Right.
The other guy's like, what a punch in the face that was.
He knocked his fucking teeth out. So the other thing I have, the breakfast. So a couple of scenes that stood out to me.
Right. Just
the breakfast scene.
Which one?
The one before
the first one where the Reverend comes to the house and he's, I sure do like those donuts. Oh, miss, I haven't had my coffee yet.
There's 10 people in this house having breakfast. They all have their own business. Some of it's happening in the foreground, some is in the background as people are talking over each other. And I couldn't help but think about one of the modern directors that does that very well, Steven Spielberg, who is on record as my favorite director.
Right.
So something that Steven Spielberg does very well and probably better than anybody else is the family dinner table scene. The Close Encounters of the Third Kind is a very good example of it, where Richard Dreyfuss and his wife and his kids, they're all talking about different things. The kid's talking about one thing, and
there are multiple conversations
going on, but you never feel, as an audience member watching it, oh shit, there's too much going on here. I can't follow what's happening. Mm. It's happening so organically and naturally that you're just sort of like another person sitting at the table and witnessing this family, right? But and obviously Steven Spielberg has had to have been a fan of John Ford.
Right. I think, yeah.
That is like the most amazing. As soon as like that scene was happening, I'm like, holy fuck.
Well, in January,
this is how you film.
Yeah, there'll be another
that natural.
There'll be another director who's very good at this in January. Sofia Coppola does does like incidental background dialogue very well. But you're totally right. From a performance standpoint, when you have two people in a room talking, that is one amount of rehearsal and one level of performance.
Yes.
Can you imagine? Both of us have performed. You obviously much more than I, but can you imagine the rehearsal that would go into having that many moving parts and then make it all seem casual?
Yeah, and the camera doesn't move. The camera is locked in one. It's
a
one
static shot.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
now, to get back into like deeper, like the deeper end of the pool, the highfalutin.
Right.
I think that performance that scene, that performance dynamic that you note there, where it's the Reverend comes in and he sits down and I sure do like those donuts.
Oh, that coffee's real good.
It's almost like Andy Devine's like, oh, what are you cooking? A couple of steaks?
Yep.
And I like that thing in the West where you come into someone's house around breakfast
they have
time,
food.
They just feed you.
Yep.
Like, constantly people are just being fed. But anyway, like, the daughters are running around, oh, I forgot to pour your coffee, and there's a lot of bustle and business and hustle. And again, in the domestic space, everyone is cohesive. Yep. Everything flows. Everyone is natural. And in the background, Ethan opens the door and comes out.
He comes in slowly.
Does not participate at all.
Nope.
In fact, his first interaction is essentially as like an aggravating force to the Reverend when he leans over and the Reverend stands up and he's like, hey,
Reverend
Ethan.
Anna.
Ranger.
Yep.
And the first thing that the guy says to him is like, you match a lot of descriptions.
Oh, right, because he's a Texas Ranger, so he's
and Ethan is potentially. I think it's.
Well, he wants to swear him in. He's like, well, that would be a felony or whatever. He's like, why, you got warrants?
It wouldn't matter anyway. Yeah,
right.
He's like, it wouldn't be legal, and he's like, why have you committed a crime? And basically, this is when we find out that Ethan hasn't renounced his oath to the Confederacy, but it also kind of is like a double tap on something we saw in a previous scene when Ethan pays his brother in gold,
in untouched,
newly minted gold, which suggests that perhaps Ethan has robbed a bank or stolen it from somewhere. And then the Ranger, I guess, he's the Reverend Ranger.
Yeah, Reverend Ranger.
But Reverend Ranger is basically like, you match a lot of descriptions. So we get the sense that Ethan has been an outlaw.
Yeah, for 3 years post-Civil War. It's pretty clear that he is.
He's done some illegal stuff. He is, again, outside that domesticity. I think John Wayne's performance, which we should start to talk about, but John Wayne's performance when he enters that room, there's all this bustle and hustle and bustle, and as he gets closer and closer, it dies down for partially because as a director you want your audience focused on the interaction between these two men, but also because he's like almost like a threatening force entering the frame.
Oh, clearly. You
know what I mean? Like it's like the prey animal scenting danger because he's not of them. It's incredible.
Yeah.
This film is fucking incredible, Carl.
I know. So
it's
it had been years since I watched this movie, but when obviously the opening shot, I knew, I was like, oh yeah, this movie's great. But it's when the moment that I knew that I remembered how fantastic this film is. It's after John Wayne and the posse has gone out to research or look after the cows have been killed or whatever. So we find out later that the Comanche have actually it's a ploy to get the men away from the home to
it's a distraction.
It's a distraction, right?
Yeah.
So that scene when they leave, Ethan's brother is still home with his wife, and they're getting ready for dinner. And the way the use of light in that scene where it's dusk, but the sun has that eerie, like orangish yellow glow and is just spilling into the home, and you know that something is wrong. Like the dogs are acting weird.
It's the golden hour, but it has a weird. It's
very super eerie.
High Plains Drifter.
Oh yes, absolutely.
It's very High Plains Drifter. That like almost paranormal.
Yeah, it's
feel.
like hell, right? So it's
fuck yeah.
So.
Oh my God!
And so they don't need to show anything. You know, they're not having a conversation about. Oh, I think there might be Comanche out there.
No,
I'm
gonna go
grabs.
see
I'm
if
gonna
I
go
can
see
shoot
him
a couple of quail before
right.
dinner.
But he grabs his pistol,
too.
And so you can tell that the mom is not quite right.
What a great bit
and then
of business.
when the daughter realizes what's going on because of the don't light the lantern
and
yet,
then she blows it out.
She blows it out. And the daughter realizes why everyone's acting so weird, and that look on her face before she screams,
right,
is so chilling.
It's even more horrifying than the scream.
Yeah,
but the little bits of business in that scene.
Yeah.
That is one of the structure of that scene. The way that scene is that they establish the horror, the mounting horror, because you can see it doesn't just start like, oh no, there's some engines
there's
outside.
something out there.
No, it starts with like
so slow.
There might be something, and that element of the unknown where he comes inside and she hears him pick up the shotgun and she looks and he's like, I don't want to worry you yet.
Right.
Because what she actually hears is him grabbing the shells.
Yeah.
And she turns and she's like, are we okay?
Are we all right?
What's happening here?
Yep.
And he's like, no, I'm just going to shoot some quail. And you can see that she doesn't buy it.
Yep.
There's an awesome bit of business where he grabs the pistol and then when he basically makes his holster swing.
Yes.
So she turns and doesn't see him take the pistol, but sees the swinging holster
yes.
and infers. So now Mom is being chill. She's like, go wash your hands, kids. And Lucy comes out and goes to light a lantern. She's like, we don't need a lantern yet. Why don't we just enjoy the dusk?
Yeah.
And there's this everyone is like, the kids are a little off, but now the parents are like, it's like this beautiful, like slow increase of pressure.
Yep.
And then you see the dad go outside, and when the dad comes back in and slams the door, the mom's like, okay, we have to keep the kids calm. But like, you can see the moment where they're all like, I think we're all fucked.
Right, yes.
They get to a moment where the parents they have accepted like prairie life. Like they're like,
they know
we're in trouble.
We're in trouble. We're in deep
We're
shit
probably
right
all
now.
going to die, but we don't want to panic the kids for as long as possible. And Lucy comes in with that lit lantern.
Lights the lantern.
And she screams, Lucy, and blows it out. And Lucy realizes there's no other reason
for Mom to be acting like that and blow out the lantern.
And Dad be standing there with a handgun and a shotgun.
Yep.
Except we're all gonna die.
We are so fucking deeply fucked right now.
Especially with a couple of young actors. There's two adults, but Lucy's fairly young. That scene is so well acted.
Yeah, it made me. I was a wreck. By the time they ditched Debbie out the window, I'm just like uncomfortable and like, oh, just the tension of that entire scene. That's that slow burn, right? Just like you explained perfectly. It's that little. No, maybe nothing's happening. It's that slow burn. It's like filling a balloon very slowly with air until it's ready to pop. Oh my goodness!
And I think part of what makes this movie like. We both agree. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance that's a phenomenal film.
Yes.
That's one of the greats.
Yes.
But
this is
the reason I think that this is so much better, because I think this is what you were about to say. The reason that this is like this transcends genre, to go back to that, to touch that cliche one more time.
Right.
Is just there is I used the phrase earlier, but there is texture to the performances. There's no one in here, even Mose. A lot of people are like, "Oh, crazy,
I love Mose." Oh, dude,
but
thank you kindly.
Those
like,
performance,
just, oh
the performance
God.
touches
They're
that actor.
And just like,
there's nobody who's like, and again, I love Andy Devine. You love Andy Devine.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But
he's a character,
right? And
yeah.
you almost don't believe he's an archetype.
Right.
He's like the jester or whatever. Everyone in this movie is a person.
Yeah.
There is
even Mose, who is like he could have been he's the fool, right? So it's like
you could have played him a different way, but like when you get Mose is fucked up, super hurt and delirious, and he's still after his rocking chair.
Yep.
That bit where he's
you
like,
promised me my rocking chair, Ethan. Like Jesus,
right? I mean, there's a God damn when he's like, you don't think I'm crazy, miss? And she goes, no, Mose, I think you're just like tired and hurt, or sick and hurt.
Yeah. Oh, you're sick and hurt.
He's like, Mose, I think you're sick and hurt. And he goes, thank you, ma'am. And you're like, fucking shit. Everyone in this movie, every actor takes it to 10, but John Wayne's, John Wayne a lot of time can have that like Levi's swagger.
He's people remember John Wayne from like Stagecoach or like he's the gunslinger, blah blah blah. What he's John Wayne,
or
but
Rooster Cockburn,
right, exactly. But
But
there was a lot more going on with him.
He's capable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of so much.
His non-Western movies are phenomenal too. Like
some of his war films.
His war films are amazing.
But a lot of, even in those, there's a lot of like, I'm the square-jawed guy who has one set of like what he manages with Ethan. Not often. John Wayne's a good actor.
Yeah.
But in this film, John Wayne is a great actor.
He's not John Wayne in this movie.
No, you see,
he's Ethan.
He's not the Duke. He's a guy who's vanishing into this role because there's stuff he does with dialogue and line delivery which are amazing, but in this time period you don't often see a lot of actors doing like truly incredible things with like facial expression or not looking at something, like looking away from something during line deliveries. Like he has very fine control.
His reaction to so we don't see when the oldest daughter is killed. We don't find that out until after he's discovered. So there's a scene where he goes into a ravine.
The war party that has taken the two girls has split.
Right.
And he sends Marty and Billy.
I think maybe Billy.
Billy's Lucy's boyfriend.
Yes.
So he sends Marty and Billy off on one track and he goes the other way. And I don't think it's chance that he goes the way where Lucy is. I think that because we've seen again and again and again, John Wayne knows exactly what type of spear this is, and he knows why certain things are done certain ways. He's familiar.
I feel like he knows what he's going to discover.
He might suspect because he doesn't seem distraught immediately, but you can tell there's like this thing he does where he very he's always yelling like like, well, don't you give me another, like that sort of thing. But when he says, you guys go on that way, I'll take this way, and they hesitate and he goes, go on, move.
Yep.
I can't even describe it, you'd have to see it for yourself, but there's a difference in his yell when he's like, well, don't you tell me what to do, and there's almost a note of fear when he tells them to move. Like, get out of here. Like, don't go that way. We see him do this again earlier in the movie when the family's slaughtered and he goes to that bunkhouse.
Oh, right.
Which is another shot of the domestic space in ruin, which, my God, when John Wayne comes over to that and looks in and ostensibly sees the slaughtered family, sees Martha dead and his brother dead.
And does not allow Marty to go in.
Marty's going to go look, and he says, no, like, don't let him in there, and he punches him to save him that horror.
Yeah.
Same thing here when he thinks possibly he knows what's at the end of this trail, and they're like, well, maybe we'll. And he doesn't brook any argument.
Nope.
He says no, and he takes that on himself because someone's got to go bury your Christian. I mean, he wrapped her in his blanket. He dug a grave with his bare hands. Yeah,
with his knife, like Jesus.
Yeah, when he gets back, and
it's like the Duke's gonna puke. Yeah.
It's not. Oh my God, that performance when before they find out that Lucy's dead, when he comes back, he's like, yeah, nothing's wrong.
Nothing's wrong. Didn't you have your coat on you? It's like, must have left it somewhere. I don't know. Dude, you can tell like some shit has gone.
He looks like he's gonna throw up.
Like he's gonna barf.
He pulls his knife out and he's just
digging it in the sand,
digging, and oh my God, he's digging in the sand.
Yeah.
Like he probably was doing like 30 minutes ago. But he's like, and he sits on the ground. Not often, he seems so dejected and heavy.
Yeah.
And he's just on the ground. I'm like, what'd you see? He's like, but he buries it, but unsuccessfully.
Yep.
It's around the edges.
It's just that next scene when they come they find the war party
tribe.
The war tribe.
Yeah, it's a war party because they talk about Scar as being a war chief.
Yes.
But the party has reconvened and made camp. The Comanche tribe has reconvened and made camp, and Billy scouts ahead, and he comes back, and he's
like,
overjoyed.
Hey, they're there. Oh my gosh, I found all the girls.
Lucy.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't see Debbie, but he's like, I saw Lucy. I saw Lucy. She's fine. And John goes, you didn't see Lucy. And he's like, I did. I saw her. And he's like, that was a buck in a dress. And he tells him that he found Lucy dead, and he goes, did they? And for the third time, John Wayne protects somebody from the horror. And he says, what do you want me to spell it out for you? Don't ever ask me again. Oh, my God.
Yeah, don't you ever ask me again for your entire life. Never ask me again.
And he doesn't. The thing that I love about that is he looks at him when he says, what do you want me to spell it out for you? And that's his anger response.
Yeah.
But when he says, and looks away from Billy and says, "Don't ever ask me again," he's protecting himself from having to relive that.
Yep. Oh my God.
And that's the only time we see John Wayne show like true brokenness. He swoons on the ground into his arm. Like he lays on the ground in a posture that's almost, I would say, classically a feminine posture, right? Where you're like sprawled out and your head is down.
Yep.
It's the most utter picture of despair that you can imagine. That's the only time we see that amount of weakness in John Wayne's character. And right after that, Billy goes off to die.
Oh yeah. He charges in. So a couple of notes I have.
Yeah.
Because of the charging in, and we've been talking about it. Oh, I just found it. So just to go back to the scene just before the raid on the home, is I wrote down shit. They dead. They all dead. Anyway, that's my actual note. Shit, they dead. They all dead. So there's that classic. So I'm going to talk about Spielberg again because that's I'm want to do. So Jaws, they couldn't get the shark to work, right? So they wanted the shark in a lot more scenes, and so they had to do a workaround where you don't see the shark. So there's that classic thing is showing the thing or not showing the thing. Right. And there's that argument of, is it better to show the violence or to not show the violence? Do you show the body? Do you not show the body? So there are very specific scenes
and then
where
there's John Ford and Martin Scorsese.
Exactly. Well, in between watching The Searchers and Unforgiven, I watched The Hateful Eight again. Jesus. And that's all about showing the violence, right?
Well, so in some ways, so is Unforgiven. But yeah,
so is Unforgiven. But in this movie, if I missed a couple of scenes, then we can talk about that. But I did a little breakdown of when you see the violence and when you don't see the violence. There's only like 2 scenes I could think of where you actually see people being killed or you see the violence. It's the battle at the river, when you have the large posse, when they get flanked by the war party, and they have to go across the river, and they sort of hole up a bit, and they shoot the Comanche as they're coming across the river. Right? You see that violence. And then the brief gunfight when Debbie first escapes from the Comanche, when they find her and she runs away from them, and I think they're on the other side of a river again, where Debbie is running down that little hill and the Comanche come after them and John Wayne gets shot by an arrow, and so you see that violence, right?
Right, yeah.
But I think the other times that there's violence, even when Scar is killed, you don't see him get shot. You see Marty shoot his pistol, but you don't see
Scar die. And when John Wayne scalps him, we cut away. We see the scalp.
You see the knife and you see the scalp, but you don't see the violence happen.
And that's interesting because you almost never see the violence, but you almost always see the aftermath.
Like the raid on the prairie home, you don't see that, but you see the bloody dress, you see the burnt homestead, and John Wayne's reaction.
The cavalry
to
wiping out the camp. You don't see that. But
you see them crossing
camp.
A river. There's a lot of crossing of rivers in this. There's a lot of liminal spaces. But there's also Harry Carey Jr. riding into this. Harry Carey Jr.'s Billy. Yeah, riding into the camp. You hear him getting killed, but you don't see it. The young daughter's death. You see John Wayne's reaction to discovering her body, but you never see her body. You just see John Wayne's reaction to it.
You see Natalie Wood's film debut as Debbie, but you don't see Christopher Walken
as
maybe drowning her off of a boat. Right. Well, no, did you know that's Natalie Wood? That's the woman who had the mysterious Hollywood drowning boat thing? I had no idea that's who that was.
That's Natalie Wood, yeah.
Yeah.
I only knew that because it was in the,
Anyway, I had a note about the violence thing, which I said all of the violence in this movie is all at a distance.
Yes.
We do see... Like, for example, when the river scene, there's a lot of shooting and a lot of people falling off horses, but there is no up close and personal violence. It's all
very wide,
violence at a distance. And I wasn't exactly sure what to make of that. Mm-hmm. It felt important because so often in Westerns you see the close-up pistol shootout, you see people clutching their chest and falling over, but all of the violence here is at a distance. Now, the river scene, I'm glad you brought this up because in my opinion, there's a reversal of the river scene later. When we watch the river scene, the way that it's primarily framed is that the cowboys are on the left and the Indians are on the right. I'm using super simple terminology.
Right.
John Wayne is just blasting, and what do we see John Wayne like go into a kill frenzy, where he's just blam, and then they start retreating, and he goes to shoot the retreating wounded in the back, and the Reverend stops him and says, "Let them take their wounded and dead."
Yeah.
And he's like, "All right, from here out, I'm on my own." He takes like 3 steps and turns around and shoots him in the back. Yeah. Now later, in the scene with the buffalo, where John Wayne and where Ethan and Marty come across the buffalo herd because they need some meat, and John Wayne starts shooting rampantly as there's a stampede of buffalo. Yeah. We've flipped it. But basically what I'm drawing is a parallel. Like, we see a stampede of innocent things running away trying to save themselves, and John Wayne just firing and firing and firing. And his whole thing, he's trying to kill all the buffalo so that the Indians starve. Right. So that the Comanches starve. That is a whole new level of like genocidal hatred. Yep.
He can't even control himself.
Think about this. This is our POV character. This is our hero.
Yeah.
He's trying to massacre an entire herd of buffalo to starve out and exterminate
a tribe of Comanche,
people.
Right? Yeah.
An entire people.
Jesus.
What I like about this, Westerns often get taken to task for their before I get into that bigger point, we have flipped our orientation. And now when we see this scene, John Wayne is on the quote unquote on the right, firing at the buffalo on the left. It's like a mirror image of the river scene.
Gotcha.
And I would argue that that's not just like for fun, for nice symmetry, but because now John Wayne has been in the wild. At this point, it's like this is the part of the 5-year jag where they're out for the long haul looking for Debbie. John Wayne has reverted. He's no longer part of a band of white men fighting an other. Right. He's now part of that wilderness and has established that way. He's on the other side of the mirror. He's in the upside down.
He's in the upside down.
No, but he's flipped. He's now like he's a man who's constantly like going back and forth between a swinging door.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now he's on the other side of that door.
He's through the looking glass.
Yes, and that's what that reversal's about, and I absolutely love that. I think that's incredible. What an incredible touch. But think about that too. We only see one buffalo go down, but the hatred on Ethan's face, on John Wayne's face, that it's really hard for actors sometimes to get like true anger, rage, or especially hatred, because hatred's a very visceral emotion.
Yes.
And I think that it can be tricky to fake, because I can only think of 2 times I've ever seen what I would call true, like, disturbing hatred on an actor's face on film. And it's Ethan when he's shooting the buffalo, and it's Robert De Niro's character before he pulls the trigger for the last time in the first
in Deer Hunter?
In Deer Hunter.
Holy
when they've got like 3 or 4, when like the last time before they start shooting the Vietnamese, when he has the gun to his head for the last time, he looks the Vietnamese guy in the eye and just screams.
Yep.
There's not words, there's not even like inflection, it's just like a scream, and that is pure hatred. Robert De Niro should forever be one of the greats. He is.
Well, he is, clearly.
And there's a lot of nuance.
That cab driver movie.
That one cab driver movie did with Scorsese. But seriously, that scream, that hate that he was able to get in that moment is one of the great acting moments, in my opinion. Yeah. It's not line delivery, man. It's really not.
It's like a visceral... I mean, you have to get there.
Right.
You have to get there. There's a difference between acting and like... acting and acting like you're acting.
Right.
Like, I'm going to be angry now. And, like, let me get... Like, to have that...
The classical Grecian poses.
To have that truth to your performance, you have to get there.
Yeah.
Like, you actually have to hate that person for that brief moment of time.
That's what
you have to get yourself to that place where you hate that person.
Yeah.
That's the only way to make that real.
Yeah.
For an actor to get there, I mean, that is fucking deep shit.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways it can be damaging too, but
absolutely.
That's part of what makes these performances especially for the Searchers, what makes John Wayne's performance here so compelling is that there's almost like there feels like there's an element of danger.
Yes.
Not even necessarily to his character, which there is, but to like the actor himself.
Yeah.
Like he's doing things to his own, like to himself, that don't feel quite safe. Although, in John Wayne's defense, not that he's definitely like his politics are very right wing, and I don't like them very much.
Sure.
But on this movie, he did do. There are several fun stories from set about like what specifically on this movie, what a good guy he was during the filming of this. There was a young Navajo boy. All of the Native Americans in this film, by the way, are Navajo. The language they speak is Navajo. The Comanche death song is actually basically just like a Navajo party song where they all just kind of chill out and sing. It's like they call it like the song of the squaw or something like that. The only Native American who's not Native American is Scar, the whitest
Comanche ever.
Yeah, I wrote that down. I was like, this should have been called. I wrote when I got to his first reveal. I'm like, the sequel, Scar, the whitest Comanche. He's a German.
He's a
German-born actor. But there was a Navajo boy who got really sick, and they were like out in Monument Valley, so they were like, oh shit, like he was sick. And John Wayne was like, he went and got his pilot, and was, because John Wayne is John Wayne, he has a private jet, and he was like, fly this boy to the hospital right now. And so basically, he got him on a private jet.
Gave him the keys to his private jet.
Yeah. Which I mean, like that sounds like what a bourgeois bastard.
Right.
But he probably saved this kid's life.
Right.
And the second thing was the woman who played Look. Have you heard this story?
No, I haven't.
The woman who played Look. When they were shooting that scene where they find her body,
yes,
John Wayne came into one of the teepees where she was sitting and she was crying, and he's like, "Oh, what's going on? Are you all right?" I mean, he's probably like, "What's your problem?
What's going on,
Why
lady?
are you crying?" But she was like, "Oh, it's okay. I just, you make sacrifices for your craft." And her son was getting married like the next day or the day after,
oh shit,
and she had to shoot her scenes, so she wasn't going to be at her son's wedding. And John Wayne was like, "Well, John Ford, we're not shooting for the next 3 days." He just shut the whole production down and flew her out to California so she could go see her son's wedding. He often went and picked up the actress who plays Lucy was still in high school at the time, and he would drive to her high school and pick her up for shoots.
Wow.
Yeah, himself. Like, he would just go get her and be like, all right, we gotta go make a movie now. And pick her up after school.
My God.
So, I mean, yeah, like, he's playing a very, very, like a despicable character, but at the same time, and he has some really questionable politics sometimes. But at the same time, he's a nice guy in his own way.
God,
my God!
I just fell in love with the Duke a lot for being such a despicable character. It's like this movie. I feel like The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. If you want an introduction to John Wayne,
those two movies are
really good. And The Quiet Man, I think, would be right up there.
Yeah. If you want a fun one where you don't have to do the mental gymnastics we're doing right now,
right?
True Grit.
Oh, absolutely. Rooster Cogburn is one of just like it's just a fun movie. Fun. Yeah.
But if you want his great performances, I think Liberty Valance and this are probably two of the best. If you're ready to deal with some really uncomfortable issues, Stagecoach is awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's just the one big chase scene, essentially, right?
Well, yeah, but there's like a lot of earlier stuff where he's hanging out with where basically him and his crew are hanging out with the Mexicans as the Stagecoach moves along. But basically, that movie's hard. That movie's tricky to watch unless you're really ready to deal with early racial American history. But it's great. It's a great film.
I mean, that can be said, but a lot of movies that were filmed and came out in like the 40s and 50s had like these underpinnings of like of race.
It's hard not to.
It's hard not to. I mean, that was just like where the world was, and like we haven't really come that far. I mean, when you think about things. But
can we jump entirely off of what we're talking about now on something else?
Absolutely.
Did you notice the stunt pistol misfire during the river scene?
Yes.
When the Reverend?
Yeah, when John Wayne tosses him the pistol, and is like, be careful, it's loaded. And he misfires. He
catches it and like, as it's like aiming down between his legs, it fires.
Yep.
And you can see the actor like
he's like, fuck.
Yeah, he like has a moment, and then he like, It's great where he like, I think it's even in character, he like brushes it off and like cocks it again and gets the pistol up and starts firing.
I definitely noticed
definitely,
that.
Though, there's some
I was like, oh, he misfired. He almost shot his foot off.
You can see that guy shitting his pants. Because it's all blanks, but still. Or with those, it would be, those are probably all percussion revolvers rather than cartridge revolvers, because it's easier to get that lot of smoke.
That pop and that big smoke.
Right, because you just overpack the cylinder, and then use, the wadding will shoot out. You still fuck yourself up with that wad.
Well, that's how Brandon Lee died, right?
No, Brandon Lee died. Quick aside on Brandon Lee, because I really like this. It was such a loss,
right?
But the story of how he died is just such a great. If you work creatively at all and do anything with guns, it's just. You know how you're not allowed on the theater set to touch props in between scenes? This is fucking why. A stuntman, there's two different types of movie cartridges for guns. One is a blank that has no round in it, but an extra load of powder, so it makes a big bang and a big flash, but there's no projectile. The other one's called a dummy round. Those have no powder, but they have a bullet. So for scenes where you are loading, when they're loading a magazine, you have to see that bullet, but they're dead. There's no powder. However, the way that cartridges work is they still have a primer on the back. That little spark that ignites the gunpowder.
Yes.
What happened was someone was fucking around with a gun, and they loaded in those dummy cartridges, and they pulled the trigger on one because, there's no gunpowder, but that primer created enough of an explosion that it pushed the bullet out of the casing into the barrel, but not out of the barrel.
Oh, fuck.
Because there's a little explosion that ignites the bigger explosion when you fire a bullet. So that little explosion, that primer fire, pushed the bullet into the barrel. And then they're like, when they unloaded everything and didn't notice that one of the bullets was missing, that gun got loaded because when you spun the cylinder, they think it was a revolver.
Right.
But when you spin the cylinder, they're all empty. But there is a bullet in the barrel.
In the barrel of the gun.
So then they loaded it with blanks for the scene where Brandon Lee gets shot on the table. And they loaded it with blanks, and the force of that double powder load for the blank fired that bullet out of the barrel, and Brandon Lee legit got shot.
Fuck me.
Because of people fucking around with their props.
Yep, you don't touch someone's prop.
That's why movies today, that's why every movie you see with a gun has a quartermaster listed. That guy watches those guns like a fucking hawk.
Yep.
And this guy had a little fun moment on set where he accidentally
killed her
and then pissed himself, which is great. Oh my god, it's knowing the Brandon Lee story makes that sort of stuff scary, but it's kind of fun to watch him misfire that gun. You're like, ooh, you're sweating.
You almost shot your dick off, sir.
Your flop sweat in the next scene is totally real. I love little stuff like that, catching that pistol misfire. I mean, I can keep going.
I mean,
are you
seriously?
done? Or?
No, I don't. Fuck, okay. I don't know. There's so much.
How about Martha and John Wayne? Or how about Martha and Ethan?
Jesus, Martha. So it's clear there's something going on there.
Right.
Like, she is gawking at him.
We're back to the beginning of the movie when Ethan first shows up at the homestead.
She's got them bedroom eyes for him, like,
for
hardcore.
Sure.
What did I say to you? The only thing that I saw was that first scene with the two of them, and I was like...
Yeah.
She wants that pretty bad right there, right?
Bird is now awake and making breakfast. But yeah, Bird watched part of The Searchers with me yesterday, and the only thing she saw was like, that girl, she wants John Wayne. She's after the Duke.
The Duke.
She wants the Duke. But what I wanted to say about them in particular is like, you can tell that his brother kind of knows something's up, kind of, but he feels like there's like a weird confidence where he's like, because he does invite Ethan to stay, and Ethan's like, I'll pay my way, and there's a weird animosity between the brothers.
Right.
However, did you pick up on at all, by the way, that Debbie might be Ethan's?
Nope.
There's a definite they're like weird bedroom eyes is more than just like I like you.
It's
what I mean?
like there's a history.
There's a history because if it had just been like a little batting of the eye, it could just be like, oh, she thinks he's a John Wayne character. Now, there's a specific moment I want to point to that reinforces, I think, the idea of an affair, a specifically sexual affair. at the end, when everyone's been deputized to go chase the cattle rustling Comanches,
Yep.
the Reverend is standing at the kitchen table with a donut and a cup of coffee, and he's staring like straight ahead-ish, but like slightly to his right. And Martha and John Wayne come together just to his left, just behind him. And she like hands him his coat and his hat. And she's looking up at him the way it's unmistakable that the performance there is she's looking up at him the way that a wife would look at a husband like going away to war or whatever. If you just took that scene out of context,
that love and longing in that,
if you took that scene out of context, 100 out of 100 people would say they're married. Those two people are fucking each other all the time. But so John Wayne like leans down and kisses Martha on the forehead so tenderly, and she closes her eyes, and there's almost like a shiver. And I think the most important portion of that scene is not their performance, but the Reverend's performance.
Yes, I was just eating a donut and drinking coffee, swirling his cup.
He is so pointedly not acknowledging
attention.
it that he's acknowledging it.
Yep.
It's especially important because he's a lawman, but he's also a reverend. And he is this is the most obvious blind eye you'll ever see.
Yep.
It's fucking amazing. It's a great dynamic. It feels like
literally turning a blind eye to
adultery.
Yes.
So that's my evidence for that. And if you look at the timeline for how old Debbie is, John Wayne's only been gone 3 years.
Right. Well, he was the war for. Well, he was gone.
Yeah. So he has been gone for 3 years, but I think Debbie's like five at the time. So there's an.
Well, she's 15 when they find her,
and they've been looking for her for 7 years.
She must have been 10 then,
what?
Or she must have been like
no. They've been because remember there was 5-year period and a 2-year period, so they've been looking for 7. So she's like 7 or 8. So there's some impetus for John Wayne to leave for a long time before he comes back.
Like, whoops, I fucked my brother's husband.
And I fucked my brother's husband. The Searchers is an incredibly progressive film for 1959. I forgot to tell you that Martha is a man.
Is a man.
But no. But yeah, no, what would make you leave for that long?
Whoops.
I kind of got your wife in
preggers, sorry.
In the family way.
Sorry, I came inside your wife.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, hey, I hope you're not too mad.
You're not too mad. I'll pay my way.
Right? It's weird. He's almost like buying his brother off.
No, seriously,
the amount of gold that he gives him.
It's a ton.
He gives him a lot because we see that 5 coins is like $20, and we find out that the Rangers are getting paid $12 a month.
Yeah.
He gives that 5 coins is $20, and he gives his brother like 100 coins.
Like a sack.
He literally just
a Crown Royal bag full
of gold, and he gives him Confederate money and
Northern
dollars.
Money. Them's Yankee dollars.
He's basically just like whichever currency you want. He gives his brother like $100,000 to just be like, I'm gonna stay at your house for a couple days. Here's like 50 grand.
Sorry for fucking your wife.
He's pretty much paying off like so that. Oh, it's almost like childcare in a way.
Yeah, sorry for the back child support.
Sorry, he had to feed Debbie for 5 years or whatever.
The MISD was coming after him.
I think that reading that Debbie might be John Wayne's as well.
That would give him more like why he has such
a personal stake in it.
Yeah.
You know, like he doesn't seem happy that Lucy's dead. He seems horrified that Lucy's dead. But he will go so far himself as to kill Debbie. And I think part of that we also see with his relationship to Marty is that he doesn't want her to be like him, a person between two worlds.
Yeah.
Who
is Marty's?
Marty's parents? The way that I understand it is that John Wayne, during some Indian skirmish or Native American skirmish, found Marty crying like under a bush, and his parents had been slaughtered.
Gotcha.
But here's another thing that I think is kind of important: is if John Wayne just found Marty under a bush and just happened upon him, how did he know that the scalp on the stick was Marty's mother's hair? Because she had been scalped at that point.
Oh, fuck.
So he would have had to either know Marty's mother or have like taken a long time because there's
Marty's dad too?
Kind of wonder, right?
Like I wondered that for sure.
But there's a
he's just fucking everybody.
The only thing I can imagine is that it would be the redhead because there's a red scalp on there,
right?
And that's very uncommon, especially in this movie. We don't see any of them.
No.
So we would assume that maybe he saw like some remnant of red hair and was like, "Oh, look, that was Marty. That was your mom."
Well, that's taking a really big leap into like the assumptive sort of like, "Oh, it was red hair. It had to be your mom."
Right. So
is that a word? Assumptive?
I think it is.
I'm going to make that a word.
What is the stronger reading? The stronger reading is probably that John Wayne was at some point involved with Marty's mother, or at least knew his parents very well.
Right.
And when he sees Marty for the first time, or when he sees Marty fully grown for the first time, and realizes that he is part native.
Right.
When he realizes he's an 8th Cherokee. When he realizes he's an 8th Cherokee, he was cold immediately.
Oh, just seriously
and
cold.
I think that
it calls him a half-breed at the dinner table.
And I think that there's some possibility that disdain is the flip side of the coin of what he feels for Debbie, where he's like, this guy is a guy between worlds.
Right.
This guy, he hates himself, and he seems to hate Marty for similar reasons because he sees a lot of himself in Marty. He leaves Marty everything.
Yeah.
At the end of the movie.
Yeah, he sure does. All him stolen Yankee and Confederate dollars.
Yeah, he bequeaths him.
Yep.
All of his stuff. It means leave.
It means leave.
I mean, yeah. There's that.
I only have one issue with this movie, actually, and
which
it's
is what?
Stupid fucking score.
Really?
I don't like the music.
Why don't you like the movie? Why don't you like? Why do you hate this movie, Carl?
I don't hate this movie. I hate the music in it. Well, I don't know. It's not fair because a lot of the movies of the era had a very similar sort of, I don't want to say jaunty soundtrack, but like a lot of like fiddle.
Yeah.
And just sometimes the scenes that I felt were called for a little
something a bit more
deep or heavy,
not somber, but
then you always had like
well,
that.
the first two songs in the film are both famous Confederate songs.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're
I don't have
songs
an
of the
issue with that, but it's the actual score.
Oh, the score itself.
The score itself
too
is just too jaunty. Like,
okay,
which is,
I can see that.
It's a trope of these westerns, though, and it's like this is how the scores were written.
But
then,
not always.
But not always.
Because
right.
Sergio Leone.
Fuck no! I actually have that as a note. Like, but
I'm sorry, not Sergio Leone. Ennio Morricone, who scored almost all of Sergio Leone's
If this had been scored
by Ennio Morricone,
oh my god!
I don't know if it would fit. I don't know if it would quite fit, but
that sort of
you mean Ennio Morricone scored The Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
If you took the Hateful Eight score and put it behind The Searchers, that might be awesome.
Fuck,
that
right?
like bomb,
yeah,
bomb, 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 bomb. It's so good. I just had another thought about the Marty Ethan relationship.
Yes.
There's a bit when they're riding, and he says, "Uncle Ethan," and Ethan says, "Don't call me Uncle." Right? So when he asks, "What should I call you?" he says, "Don't call me Sir either." Right?
Right.
Uncle and Sir are both, to speak broadly, like quote unquote terms of civilization.
Yeah.
They're part of a hierarchical, structured, ordered world. And he says, "What should I call you?" And he says, "Well, my name's Ethan." So I know I find the smallest stuff.
I know, I love
apart.
it though.
But he won't engage with him in the structure of the white world, but allows them to communicate as equals in the wild.
Yeah.
So I think that part of that is when he realizes that he's 1/8 Cherokee, he immediately identifies him. He doesn't push him away. He lets him come with him for fucking 7 years. He gives him some shit.
Sleeping next to each other on the ground, like
right. So he has he begrudgingly allows him this space because in his mind, in his racist fucked up mind, this is a place, the wild, the dangerous wild, the unknown. This is a space where Marty is allowed to move. This is where Marty belongs, and he has a place at that table. But he won't allow him to operate there under the auspices of the of the white structured prairie formal world.
Oh my goodness!
Right, little stuff like that. You can pick the fuck out of this movie.
Well, that's
what great.
Another could literally hours picking this. This is my notes. Could literally hours picking this movie apart. Not overhyped. It is brilliant and beautiful.
I like your notes. Your notes don't have the word auspices in them.
No, they don't. And I'm leaving out words who could literally hours picking.
This, I know. Well, when you stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning drinking.
Seriously.
There's, like this movie's meditations on violence. For example, when you get the line, when John Wayne apologizes to Billy's parents,
yes,
and says like, I got your boy killed, and the mom or the dad says, don't feel guilty.
Right.
It was this country killed my boy.
Fuck.
Right?
Yeah.
Like the constant Western meditation on violence. I think that there are several readings of that line which are super telling, because that guy given his accent, he's clearly an immigrant.
Yes.
But does he mean that the inherent violence of America killed him, or which is a conversation we're still having now?
Oh, clearly.
Like every mass shooting, were they killed? They were obviously killed by like a mentally ill gunman, but were they killed in a broader sense by the culture of violence in America, or
which has always been the case, right? We're a culture of violence.
We're talking about a film from 1959, which is dealing with issues from 1850 or 1860 something.
Yep.
Even then, the culture of violence was such that people were like, "Oh, this country's so savage and violent and brutal that
it wasn't the gun that did it; it was the country that did it.
It's
it was
the culture of violence or the cult of violence."
Right.
2, does that mean that the Native Americans the Comanches who in a very real sense killed Billy, does that mean that they represent the country?
Right.
This is their land.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
So in a weird way, Billy's father is aligning himself with an outsider or an intruder.
Right.
Entering into this country, and part of that country, part of that landscape, is the Native Americans who have their legitimate claim. They killed his son because Billy was encroaching on their land.
On their land.
Yep. So I mean, there's so many layers to this movie.
Fucking brilliant.
I know. I mean,
so one scene in particular. So there's not a whole lot of humor in this movie.
There's a couple,
but there are a couple of moments. One of my favorite scenes in the movie, because it gives you that little bit of breath, like a breath of fresh air, and kind of lets you off the hook for a second.
Yeah,
is the fight between
at the wedding
between Marty and I don't remember I sure do like you, babe. I'm gonna play my guitar nice and pretty for you.
He hated that accent.
Oh,
he was doing it as a joke on set one day, and John Ford heard him do it. And he was like, "That's perfect, do that." And he's like, "No, don't let me do. Please don't make me do this."
That's hilarious.
He hated that accent.
Well, golly, I sure do like you, miss. But that fight is brilliant. It's like he pulls a log out, like spit over the log. It's like they go out. It's like, again, we talked about this with like in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Right.
It's like men being men, and there's certain rules to being a man, like spit over the log. But then there's these moments like when everyone's like, "Oh, someone's fiddle!" Like they didn't want to break the stop. Someone's fiddle.
That is, it's one of my favorite fight scenes, specifically because now today. John Wayne pushes the mother back in and says, like, "Don't forget you're a lady."
Right.
And she runs immediately to the window and starts watching the fight. But there's a certain perspective today could critique that and say like, well, there's never a reason to fight, and like that's just men being violent and blah blah blah. But there is a certain weird honor about that fight.
Well, the Reverend like
pulls him apart and he's like,
"Are you be friends?"
Well, at the beginning of the fight, he's like, "Are you operating as a member of the U.S. or the United States
this is a
Rangers?"
personal matter.
More of a personal matter. He goes, "Well, okay then. All right, now square up. I don't want." And he immediately starts
no biting, no
biting,
no
gouging, and he's basically like, if it's a personal matter, all right, well, the rules of the West say that you boys are going to settle it. I'm going to be here to make sure it's clean. And he starts calling the fight.
Yeah.
Because they fight, and he's like, Marty, no. Yeah, because Marty kicks him in the chest. He goes, no kicking. And he's like, Marty, no biting. All right, get clean. Get him apart. And he goes, wait. It's someone's fiddle. And the
someone's fiddle, right?
And they stop.
They stop the
fight because it's It's not.
Someone's personal property is going to get damaged.
It's like, yeah, and he gives it to him. And he's like, "Here you go, Vinny. All right, okay." And they turn back around and punches him. Yeah. But I like that fight because it's not. It is violent.
Yes,
but it's not. The violence we've seen in the rest of the movie is a bestial violence fueled by hatred. This is a weird sort of like. I almost want to call it
like a happy
fisticuffs.
fight. Yeah, it is physical. Well, he's doing the whole.
There's a weird sort of. It's a totally like wild, undignified thing, but there's a strange dignity to the fight, which is actually appealing to me. Yeah. Which I know, you're like, oh well.
Well, no, that's why I brought it up. That's why I brought it up, though. There is that weird sort of like dignity of like men duking it out,
right? It
is violent,
it's
right?
Violent,
they're going after each other,
at the end
clearly,
of it,
but
they do shake hands,
right?
And after the fight it's almost like
they scrap again.
Oh my god, you know what it almost is? It's almost they don't scrap again.
Yeah, they do in the house. After the fight, they go after each other again for a hot second.
They get separated like immediately. Yeah. But it's almost as if everyone present recognizes that everyone's got their dander up. Their hackles are up.
Yep.
And these two guys, if we are going to have a measured, reasoned discourse, these two guys have to get this out of their system.
Right.
It's not a like, I'm going to kill you, you fucking bastard.
Right.
It's not a brutal fight. It's like, we need to let off some steam.
I'm going to take you.
I'm so mad at you that I'm going to have to punch you. You're going to punch me. And after we've worn ourselves out, we're going to sit and talk.
Right.
It's almost understood as a necessary prerequisite to like being a thinking person. When your brain is that ramped up on adrenaline, you gotta like. I think in a lot of ways, this is kind of the problem that we're having today with Facebook, right? Where it's like, like someone posts a political meme, and then the comments section's like 6,000 people who don't have. Think about this though, like who are stewing in fury, and all they have to get it out is tiny motions of their fingers and a keyboard.
Right.
Now, if you took that person and the person with a meme and threw some gloves on them, I'm dead serious about this.
I love it.
Put them in the backyard and said, all right, no biting, and gave them like 5 minutes to just beat the shit out of each other. At the end of that, do you think either of them would be as fucking livid as they are on Facebook? Absolutely not. Nope. I think in some instances, especially in controlled instances where you've got the good old reverend being like, no biting.
No biting.
And you've got men who are like dusting you off and then like, all right, go back to it. You guys done yet? Like in a weird controlled way, letting some of that poison out allows you to move forward. Right. And we don't have any of that today because we have such a culture
of medication.
It's this with medication. We do. You want to get punched in the head? You just take a pill.
Take a pill,
and then you sit dumbfounded on your couch for the rest of the day. Right. But no, it's infuriating to me because there's this weird. It's partial. Part of it is like the lawsuit culture. Like, oh, you pushed me, you assaulted me. It's like, well, why don't we just like if we could just work this?
Can't we just work?
Let's just hit each other for like a little while,
for a hot second.
Give us
not like the purge, but just like the punch.
Don't need the
we don't need the purge.
And I'm not talking like guns and knives in the alley. Like, all right, let's tie our wrists together and pop our switchblades. I'm talking like, like you got a couple of your friends, I got a couple of my friends. Let's just you and me. We're gonna hit each other for a little bit, and then we're gonna figure out what's.
We're gonna go the
here.
Outsiders for just a hot second.
We're too mad to do anything, so let's do what we want to do. Yep. And then at the end of it, we're going to shake hands and we're all just going to be okay with what happened. Yep. I think that's part of being human. And I think that the loss of that is not a good thing. Anyway, I know that's a controversial opinion.
Oh, no.
In some ways. I
sit firmly in that camp with you, sir.
Every once in a while, right?
Yep, every once in a while.
You should be able to have a little tussle every once in a while.
You have to be able to punch a motherfucker and let them punch you.
Absolutely.
Squarely in the nose.
I think getting hit is an important thing.
It rings your bell and it clears your fucking brain.
I'm a bit biased because I've boxed since I was 14. Right. But
I just got hit a lot when I was a kid.
But there's a thing where you're boxing and you get your energies up and you're feeling confident. And now I never box with people that I'm like fucking livid at, but like when you're boxing with your friends and you get that adrenaline rush and your heart's racing and your head's going and you get tagged in the face, boo! You drop down to zero. You become defensive immediately. You're calm. because getting tagged, just your body goes out of like super heightened adrenaline mode.
Right.
You're no longer on the offensive. You're like, okay, I'm sorry.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right, yeah, no,
like every once in a while, if you're like, well, you're a fucking snowflake, blah, blah, blah. If that dude got tagged in the face, he might be like, I don't know what I was thinking. Look, I said some things I didn't mean.
Right,
you know,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
It takes you back to 0.
It does. It's a reset.
Yep.
Getting fucking
like,
punched.
oh, shit.
Getting hit in the face is a reset.
It is.
But anyway, I love that scene. I'm glad you brought up humor because there's a couple of other funny moments that I thought, like the recurring joke when they're in the Mexican tavern and he won't let Marty drink anything.
The tequila, right.
And then he goes over and he picks up Marty's glass when Marty's eating dinner and he smells it and
Throws
throws
it
it
in
on the
the
fire. I wrote down, John Wayne want to burn the restaurant down.
Oh, you made a Karl note. That's great. John Wayne want to burn the restaurant?
I forgot about that scene entirely,
Yep.
but that fireball from that one shot of
Lights
tequila,
half the wall on fire.
it's like the fire is
And it's
taller
like
than John Wayne.
Yeah, and he doesn't even flinch at it. He's like, yep, just walks out.
Which is great.
Yep.
What a great. It's like when you see people shoot guns in movies and they twitch.
Right.
John Wayne does not flinch at all. There's
Nope.
fire on the floor.
Yep.
There's fire on the ceiling.
Yep.
Like you can see people flooding in to try and put out
like,
the
holy shit, the set's gonna burn down. And the Duke just walks out.
He just
Fuck
walks
it. Don't
out
care.
like you can just tell. You don't see him smile, but you can tell that like his eyes are like did I just fucking burn the rest?
It's like, holy shit.
They're gonna have to rebuild this set.
That was super flammable.
I love that. There's a great moment at the end. Like this movie does have moments of levity,
Yes.
which are great because we talked about in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid
Yes.
when they're being chased. I said that those moments of levity let off too much pressure.
Yes, too
this
much.
This movie is so dark and so toxic in places that without these are little gulps of air before we dive back down. And they're great. Their spacing is great. Their brevity is great. They're not like big slapstick Andy Devine moments. There's just jokes. Like when his son playing the cavalryman.
Oh, the cavalry, and he keeps getting interrupted. That was ad-lib, by the way. Like, he was supposed to come in and just deliver that whole
And they fuck with
speech,
him?
and they fucked with him. They kept interrupting him. That's why he's like, I just want to get this line out. I'm nervous.
I heard his take on it was he was legitimately nervous.
Yes.
Because for two reasons. One, because his dad is his dad, a legendary actor, is there watching him. And two, John Ford was notoriously hard to work with and shitty to actors, but he was always nice to John Wayne's son, so the rest of the cast didn't like him because he never got his turn, you know, like getting
He never
shit
got
on.
the John Ford.
No, it's exactly what Steven Spielberg did in Saving Private Ryan.
Right.
You heard this story with
Yes.
Matt Damon, where every time Matt Damon came to set, he would be like in a nice location. Steven Spielberg would bring him coffee.
And the fucking rest
of the
cast
crew was like
hated him.
they were living in like shitty ditches and stuff and didn't get enough food
So when
to
they
eat.
finally find him, they're like, I fucking hate you. I can't believe we have to do this shit.
All those scenes with Matt Damon, there's genuine dislike because he's been getting treated better on set than they are.
Matt, you want a donut? Oh,
Yeah,
Tom.
literally, there's
eat
like-
shit in the ditch, right?
Yeah, like Steven Spielberg intentionally made it hard on everyone else except Matt
for
Damon.
Matt Damon.
So when they finally meet him, they treat him like the hoity-toity officer
right.
that he is.
You motherfucker.
Not one of us, motherfucker.
Right.
We're over here. Like Tom Hanks has
Tom
trench
Hanks,
foot
right.
for real. But I love the joke. The joke is so smart and so fast.
Yeah.
When they're sitting there and he goes, John Wayne says to the cavalryman, he says, turn around. And he looks at his back and he goes, yep, you're a Yankee cavalryman. And the joke is he's only ever seen them retreating.
Right. He's only
Because they're all stupid cowards.
Right.
And he goes, I resent that. I'm just fooling. Son. I'm just fooling. That's, I mean, we haven't even touched on what is often the most quoted passage of dialogue in this movie. We see, I can't remember her fucking name, the girl that is sweet on Marty.
Oh, right, the one that reads the letter.
Yeah, she reads the letter, and she's kind of a fun character, but I think it's intentional too. She is given the most brutally racist line of dialogue in the entire film. When Marty's like, I have to go back out and find Debbie, and she essentially, I'm paraphrasing completely, the actual dialogue is almost as harsh as what I'm saying, but they find a way to do it without the brutal honesty. But basically what she says is, Marty, Debbie's just been gang raped by savages for 8 years.
Right.
She's not even human anymore. And Martha, her mother, would want John Wayne to shoot her in the head.
Yep.
She literally says, put a bullet in her head. That's what Martha would want.
Yep.
And yes, that was very brutal language. It is in keeping with the film. And the dialogue is not exactly that, but it's almost that. It's literally like young bucks having their way and passing each other around till they're done. That's what she says.
Yep.
She's been driven insane by a lifetime of just brutal rape. Wouldn't it be better if she was dead?
Just shot her in the head.
And this is our sweet... We just saw two guys have a fun, wacky fight over marrying this girl. And she just said that to the man that she loves, who spent 7 years of his life.
And justifying Ethan's desire to do the same.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. That turn of her character is shocking because it's not a turn. It's just a reveal.
Yeah.
It's like, not to get too political, but it's like talking to someone that you thought you've known your whole life, and all of a sudden they say something about like, well, the blacks, and you're like,
whoa.
Oh, what? What'd you just say?
Record scratch.
Right. Like,
what?
Yeah, you're just like out at you're having a good time at a wedding, and you're having a couple drinks.
Hey, how about them N-words? And you're like, pardon?
Excuse me?
What?
One more time?
Just
run that by me.
Just real quick.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Yeah.
And it's shocking because in this context, you start to sense that hers is not the minority view.
Right.
And that's hard to swallow. That's fairly near the end of the film,
Yeah,
too.
it is.
I think that that's a brilliant writing move, putting that there, because what we get shortly thereafter is what I will call Ethan's redemption. Where Ethan, who is the poster boy for the sentiment that she just explained, comes to terms with comes to terms with an evolving personage or a person between places, or allowing someone to exist in more than one space and allowing someone the space to heal rather than just, you have been removed from the domestic space, you are cast aside.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's allowing that redemption.
That moment when he picks Debbie up and you can see her
fear. Yeah,
she's like, she clenches up and then he swings her down into his arms like he's holding a baby.
Yep.
That's one of the great film moments. Any genre.
It's amazing.
It's so good. Did you know that her whole audition was just whether or not John Wayne could pick her up easily?
No shit.
She went into audition and it was John Ford and John Wayne sitting in a room. And she was like waiting for them to hand her a script, and John Ford looks at John Wayne and goes, "Go ahead." John Wayne smiles at her, lifts her up, sets her down, turns back to John Ford and goes, "Yeah, that's easy. No problem at all." And she got cast. That's it.
Fantastic.
That's her whole audition. I dream of moments like that in my own life.
Oh, seriously. What, John Wayne picking you up?
Yeah. Oh my God. And smiling at me, just loving me.
Great.
All right. Do you have? I don't have anything else.
I can't. We could literally
I could talk about this movie forever.
All day we could talk about this movie, picking it apart.
I'll say right now, this is my favorite use of Monument Valley. The landscape
Epic
that
doesn't
they
even that.
No, not at all. There are movies that shoot wider and shoot a grander view, but this strategically uses it in a way that really shows its grandeur, but also the harsh, unforgiving nature of it. I mean, we could talk about the cinematography. I've already touched on a lot of the framing stuff that's brilliantly
there are very few close-ups in this
symbols
movie.
And metaphor, not at all.
And they're all very intentional.
And most of them
used.
are John Wayne's face.
Yes.
The scene. Oh my God. The shot. Okay, go ahead. What were you?
Yeah. When they discover the women that have been.
Yes, we're talking about the same fucking scene.
Yeah.
When the women who've been captured by the Comanches,
and they're crazy.
They do that. It's a
they
zoom.
dolly in.
It's not a zoom. It's a dolly with a change in focus.
Yeah.
But they dolly in on John Wayne's face when he turns around.
He's half in shadow. His eyes are
just
in
like we talked about with Unforgiven, with the heavy use of black.
Yes.
Of dark shadow and absolute blackness. That's one of the few times in this movie where you don't see John Wayne's face entirely, and I think that darkness, that sinister. I mean, because
it's hatred.
Yeah,
and loathing.
It's using lighting to express an emotion. That's fucking brilliant.
Yep.
But I mean, like, the horse is in the snow. Yeah. I love westerns in snow, man. Talking about the Hateful Eight, fucking awesome. Just seeing
if the Hateful Eight had been like a spring movie, like in the springtime, wouldn't work.
Well, it wouldn't have worked because the whole thing is that they're snowed in. But if they were springed in, too many flowers growing outside. They all have like really bad.
We got too many weeds out there.
Terrible
really
allergies,
right?
And they're like, we got to hold up till these flowers are done being. I mean, then there's the last shot where everyone re-enters the domestic space except
for Ethan.
I think that in a way, at the end of the most famous example of a cowboy riding into the sunset is Shane.
Yes.
Right? And we talked about last week. We talked about in Unforgiven that Clint Eastwood doesn't ride into the sunset; he rides into perfect blackness.
Yes.
This is another twist on that, because what we've seen before with like The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and we talked about it with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where there's a point where a violent man or like a dinosaur of a man or whatever, that archaic archetypal cowboy character has a purpose, but after that certain purpose, he must go away now.
Yep.
And leave the domestic space because you're
no longer needed.
Right. Shane is... We didn't watch Shane, but we should do it for Patreon.
Yeah.
But Shane is the perfect example of this. You've never seen Shane?
No.
Ooh, we're going to watch Shane. That's a fucking awesome movie.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Shane because it's talked about all the time, but I haven't...
So so I've just, this whole time that I've just been like using this as my Western touchstone, it hasn't meant anything to you?
No, it has, because I'm familiar.
So at the end of Shane, he comes over basically and tells the kid, he's like, tell your mother there's no more guns in the valley. Because that's her whole thing. Yep. I'd like to see all the guns out of the valley. The domestic, I'll call it civilized. That's not necessarily what I mean, but the civilized desire is, I'd like there to be no more violence and we can all live peacefully. Shane comes in and anyway, at the end of the movie, Shane has eliminated basically all violence by just killing it. But now, as long as Shane's there, there's still one more gun in the valley. That domestic space is never safe as long as he's there, and that's why he rides into the sunset. In this one, everyone moves back into that civilized domestic space that we saw at the beginning of the film. But John Wayne, he's never been of that. So what do we see? We don't see. He stands outside, looks in longingly, and then turns
around, and
takes
walks.
A couple of steps, and the door closes on him. So John Wayne's he makes more movies after this, but in a weird way. This is the last John Wayne movie.
Yeah.
This is the natural end of John Wayne's, relevance. Did you know this movie was going to be remade in the 90s as a space opera?
What?
Yeah. I got nothing else to say about the film proper.
Fair enough.
Do you?
Nope.
This film is amazing.
Yeah.
This is absolutely incredible, and I think strongly in the running for this quarter's.
I know, right?
I'm not going to say for the season because we got a lot of movies to
go through, but for the quarter,
this is pretty fucking strong.
Yeah,
it's going to be hard, especially because they're all different. But I'm excited for the shootout. But in the early '90s, Terry Gilliam was set to direct.
What? How do I not know this?
Terry Gilliam was set to direct Bruce Willis as Ethan and Johnny Depp as Marty, and the whole thing would be set in space.
I want to see that.
I don't. I so don't. Why would you ever want to see that?
Because when I was watching this movie, I was thinking to myself, you know what this movie needs?
More space. More outer space. Aliens took Debbie.
Right, exactly. And you know what? I want Terry Gilliam to direct it.
Oh my God. No, I'm not. I won't allow it. I won't allow it. You know what's weird is this movie's they've tried to remake and update this movie a couple times. I heard a rumor. There was a rumor online. I wasn't able to substantiate it, but I heard that I think it was Paramount or Warner Brothers announced in 2008 that they were going to remake this movie as a zombie movie.
I feel like you're pulling my chain.
I'm fucking dead serious. Someone said that
the zombies.
The twist was going to be that that Debbie was a zombie, and they were tracking her down to try and save her before she got infected or something like that.
And then they have to kill her.
Nothing ever happened with the film.
Right.
This was moving around studios where they're like, we could do the searches.
They were shopping it around.
All right. Listen, I got an idea, guys. I got an idea. You over there? Can I get a decaf latte really quick? I'm going to blow your minds. Just hold off on that for a second. All right, you remember The Searchers? Remember one of the greatest films ever made? Basically the epitome of the Western and one of the most powerful comments on American mythology and American culture that's ever been made?
Right.
Now, what about zombies? All right, I'll take that latte
Mic
now.
drop.
You just pray to
Searchers the musical.
you just pray that Hollywood
Ah, damn Comanche, they come getting Debbie. I don't like it when they shoot my eyes out. That's the
Right,
the
exactly.
ghost of the Indian.
and then like the intermission song is "No More Buffalo,
No more buffalo.
you know, like
We just broke the podcast. That's all right.
I think we may have. Yeah, that's literally all I
Yep,
have. I just
that's
thought
it.
that I wrote down that Terry Gilliam thing when I
That's
found
so
it because I know he's
crazy.
your favorite director.
Oh my God.
I'm ashamed of you for liking that idea. But folks at home, this was by far our longest episode so
Yep.
far,
And rightfully so, though.
Rightfully so. Yeah, we did almost 2 hours.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So anyway, I literally have nothing else. I
Nope.
cannot say another word about this, or I'm just gonna start picking more minute things to focus on.
Do I have any more clever notes?
I can.
Probably not.
I will vamp while you look at your broken pig Latin stuff over
it's
there.
true.
But seriously, I cannot recommend this movie highly enough. This movie is phenomenal. If you want to casually watch something, or if you're a casual film fan, you should still watch it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if you've listened to this without seeing it and have had the whole movie ruined for you, but can now look at it with like those things in the back of your
Yes.
head. But if you're a film lover and you haven't seen it, if you're a cinephile and you haven't seen it, you should watch this movie.
Do yourself a damn favor and
Really
watch
should watch
The
this
Searchers.
movie. All right. Should we do some housekeeping?
Oh, do it.
Housekeeping?
Housekeeping.
All right. So this is we're done with our second month. We're about to start recording our third month, which,
Yes.
we should tell them what next month is going to be.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
All right, April, you got your Westerns. And for May, for the lovely, lovely month of May, we will be doing all Nicolas Cage
Oh my
all the time.
God.
It's 4 Nicolas Cage films back to back to back to back to back.
That's so much Nick Cage.
We're going to take Nicolas Cage all the way from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. We're going to go down
my God.
We're going to go into the cage with Cage. You guys are going to fucking love it. I'm
Yeah,
super
I'm so
stoked.
ready.
I'm so glad you like
I
Nicolas
know.
Cage.
It's great. Oh, he's
All right.
fantastic.
So that's what we're doing next month. If you want to go and check out more content, movies, we do a regular season, but there's so many movies in the world.
Yes.
And there are a lot of movies that might not necessarily
Fit in the regular program?
correct. There are films that are a bit too much, a bit too extreme, beyond the pale, maybe too weird. Movies that are maybe not necessarily good enough to be in this thing, such as sequels and remakes. So we're going to be doing a lot of Patreon exclusive episodes over on patreon.com/Max Peterson. That's SON. You can get lots of if you think if you like what we're doing and you think that we deserve a little bit of moolah here and there, that'll help pay for things like updated equipment perhaps in the future, but more importantly, web hosting. Hosting this show is not free.
Nope.
That definitely costs a little bit of money. The regular show is always going to be free, and we're going to keep it going regularly. We are recorded way out in the future at this point, and we're going to keep doing that. We're going to try and have the season in the can by June.
Right,
so,
exactly.
so and in exchange for tossing us a little scratch here and there to keep the show up and running and on the air and maybe improve it in the future, like some of the things we talked about were adding a video component to the show.
Absolutely.
Doing like a live stream as we record episodes.
Yep.
Which would be fun, especially because we record so far in advance that people get a sneak peek.
Exactly.
Doing things like that. I'll get shout outs on the show. You can get our ill-begotten season 0 where we talk about 7 movies that'll never appear on the regular season. It'll be a Patreon exclusive. We are doing actually I'm not sure if they'll be out at this point. We are recording way ahead of time,
Months
so it's
ahead,
hard to do this. But we're planning several series. We're gonna watch all 4 of the I Spit on Your Grave films with my progressive feminist wife. We're gonna watch those. She's a horror fan though, so it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's not gonna be like, and here's another reason why it suck, and another reason. And they're great movies too for like raw. If you have been wronged by a man, go watch one of those fucking things, because it's just dudes getting slaughtered brutally by a woman who's been wronged by men. So we're gonna do a 4 episode series of all the I Spit on Your Graves. We talked about we're gonna do a Vincent Price series. We're gonna do a Stephen King series. All of these Patreon exclusives where we're gonna do movies adapted from Stephen King books. We're gonna do a weird horror month, which might coincide with October, where we're gonna do both the original and the remake of House of Wax. We got lots of fun stuff over on Patreon. You can go and check that out. That should be they'll definitely be live by the time you hear this, since this is, I don't know, like December that we're recording.
It's March.
Yeah, no, this will be April.
No,
it's March right now.
Currently it's March, yeah.
My God, we're crossing the streams. We should do a time travel episode, time travel month. There's some good time.
There's
travel
some really
movies.
good. Yeah.
We'll talk about this off
Talk
the
about
air.
that off there. Yeah.
All right. So if you want to find out more about us at the time of this recording, we don't have a Measuring Flicks social media page. That is on the docket for the future. Karl is insanely busy right now, so we're gonna wait for him to have his schedule cleared up a little bit more before we go any further with that. We're gonna keep the episodes coming though. If you want to follow either of us and see what other creative wackiness we are up to, you can follow me on Instagram primarily. I'm never on Facebook. I hate that fucking cesspool. But you can follow me on Instagram at actualmaxp, or you can follow Karl on the facebooks.com at Wayward Trips. And you'll notice I was so tired this morning, I did actually write facebooks.com.
You did write facebooks.com.
Oh my God,
goodness.
Next week will not be daylight savings time.
No, fuck.
So we're going to be sharp. We were pretty fucking sharp.
Actually, I feel like we did pretty well, considering that I've drank a lot last night.
we made it through, man.
We did it. I'm so proud of us.
All right, I literally have nothing else.
Nope,
so
I'm good.
I should have thought of this earlier.
Oh, son of a bitch.
I know, we gotta
again.
have some kind of outro, and it's coming fast. It's gonna be...
You're gunslinging? What are you doing?
It's gonna be I don't know. Karl, let's ride off into the sunset and close the door on Westerns.